Hello and welcome. I'm Lindsay Crane and these are my retro craft dreams. It's time for another library day. I am long overdue for another library day, and in one of my recent pattern roundup videos, someone expressed disappointment that I didn't go through a pattern book page by page showing everything in the book, which wasn't the purpose of pattern roundups. That was to share patterns around specific themes. However, it did occur to me that I could start incorporating pattern books into library day videos, and we can go through them one by one. But before we get around to going through any regular pattern books, I thought today it might be fun to look through a couple of pattern recipe books. So if you've ever wanted to make your own graphic sweater in the 80s style, but you can't find something you like, well, guess what? There are books to help you create exactly what you are looking for. And I have two such books in my collection. They give you patterns for basic stockinette sweaters and then pages of graphics that you can add to any of those sweaters, as well as instructions for creating your own design. So today I thought we would go through these books. I'm going to show you what sweater patterns each of them gives you, as well as all of the pattern designs that they include. And at the end, I'm going to see if I can follow the instructions to create a design of my own, even if it's going to be a long while before I get around to knitting it. So let's dive into these books and see what's possible. No prior designing skills required. First up today is George Hostler's Knatty Knits Guide to Customized Knitting. Basic classics with flair, over 30 stunning picture knits. Compiled by George Hostler, illustrated by Mike Peterkin. The illustrations are lovely, actually, but there are no photos in this book. It is from 1986 in London. Here we have the contents. We've got creative hints, how to do graphs, how to use graphs, knitting hints, machine knitting, the basic classics, those are the sweater patterns, and then it's broken up into some categories of the graphic designs. Creative hints. So we've got some basic tips, we've got some bits about colors and stripes. The motif or design. When you are tackling an actual picture or motif, it still isn't necessary to demonstrate great drawing skills. If you can draw or get someone to draw for you, then obviously your task will be that much easier, but the instructions as outlined can be used to adapt any picture, photograph, or drawing you might have. And then we've got a bit about starting the design. Bear in mind that the finer the yarn used, the more detail you will be able to show. A chunky knit has huge stitches and you will have to settle for a simple, bold design. On a 4-ply garment, the stitches are small and there are lots of them, so you can tackle a very detailed design. And then we've got a bit about sizing the design. Before you copy your original picture or drawing onto the graph paper, you must decide upon its size and how it will fit into the garment. The easiest method of sizing a single motif for your garment is to hold a tape measure up to the person you intend knitting for and decide how many inches or centimeters wide you think you would like the picture to be. Translate the measurements into stitches and rows simply by checking the tension instructions in the knitting pattern you are going to use. So you are going to need to do gauge swatches. This will give you the number of stitches and rows per inch or centimeter. So now that we've got these creative hints under our belts, we're going to talk about how to do graphs. So here he's got the basic method. You'll see this in a lot of vintage books. And by the way, if you want me to do a whole video on this, do let me know down in the comments below, because this technique is used here, but it's also used a lot in things like needlepoint and embroidery, where they provide you the line art and it's up to you to enlarge it using this grid method. So here we have the basic grid method for transferring a design. But he goes into details about how you can translate that into the elongated version required for knitting. Now there are, of course, graph papers that you can download. You can even put in your exact gauge into, what is it? What's the guy? Kevin MacLeod, his website. Kevin MacLeod's website, he does a lot of music, but he also does graph paper, and you can put in the exact dimensions of graph paper that you want and get a PDF of the dimensions that you require. But here he's just got, you know, these bolder lines so that each one represents an inch this way and that way, so that the stitches will still match up to each square in the graph. The next step is to square up the picture you're going to work from. Squaring up means drawing a grid over the picture to act as a guide when you are copying onto graph paper. I prefer to draw this grid onto tracing paper, then lay it over my original picture so that I can use the same grid again and again. It also prevents damage to the original picture, which may be of some value. So that is a great tip. Get yourself some tracing paper, put your grid on that, and then you can put it on top of any piece of artwork that you want to scale up for any kind of craft that you are working on. Great tip. The easiest way of deciding on the scale of the grid is to make the number of squares correspond to the number of inches you want the finished work to measure. In other words, if you are reproducing a portrait head and you want it to be 6 inches wide, then divide that picture of the head into 6 squares across. Now you have to draw a grid on the graph paper which corresponds with the grid over your picture. Again, you must take note of the knitting tension to be used. Each stitch will be represented by 1 square on the graph paper. Continuing with the 4-ply portrait as the example, with 7 stitches to the inch, start marking out the 6 grid squares by counting along the bottom row graph square 6 times. So here is our inch, and we have 6 stitches to the inch. So that is how he has decided where to draw these bolder lines. The number of rows per inch in 4-ply is usually 9. Although check your own row gauge, you can adjust it accordingly. Mark off vertically, therefore, as many sets of 9 graph squares as there are drawn squares on your original grid. So here he's got 9 rows per inch, and that's how he has decided where to make the bolder horizontal line. And then he can transfer curve by curve and add the drawing in accordingly to where that line matches against the larger square. All that remains now is to go over the drawing more firmly with your pencil, but this time follow the lines on your graph paper. Curves will be drawn in steps on the graph paper, and the amount of detail will be determined by the number of squares at your disposal. So he's gone from this line drawing on the graph paper to marking out the edges of each stitch. Also very useful in needlepoint. Once you have completed the chart to your satisfaction, color the sections of your drawing with crayons. Don't cover your chart with those symbols for colors which appear in some knitting patterns, as they are simply used by publishers to cut pattern printing costs. A colored chart is much easier to look at and follow, so make yours a work of art. And then over here, he does point out to ignore very tiny details such as a single stitch to make a glint in the eye, or very fine lines such as a cat's whiskers. Make a note of where they go, but touches like this are best embroidered in afterwards. We've got the graph figured out. Then we have a page on how to use the graphs. Now I'm not going to go through this because this is down to the practice of knitting itself, and right now we're just looking at how to create the patterns. However, he does go through some brief instructions for both hand knitters and machine knitters. So now we are on the sweater pattern section. These are basic classics. So whenever you want to create your own design, most color work is done in basic stockinette. So you could actually take any stockinette pattern you have and put your own design on that. But here they have provided some basic classics. Each garment is straightforward to knit with a minimum of shaping so that you can concentrate on getting your picture knitting techniques perfected. There are 2 cardigans shown, one a 4-ply classic, the other a 50s styled chunky outdoor garment. The 2 slipovers are meant to contrast, one a youthful boxy vest style, the other a classic V-neck. The 3 sweaters are all basic shapes with differing collar detail, and each in a different thickness of yarn. The yarns recommended are described simply as chunky, double knit, or 4-ply. Now we're on the patterns. The first one, this is the classic 4-ply sweater. Tension is 14 stitches and 18 rows for 5 centimeters or 2 inches. So 28 stitches for 4 inches. So this is going to be that fine fingering weight or possibly sport weight yarn. But here we have a basic sweater with a crew neck. We've got 2x2 rib. So that's just a nice blank canvas, basic classic sweater, as it says. Then we have a V-neck slipover in double knit. So that's DK weight yarn. So the tension is 22 stitches for 4 inches and 30 rows. A nice simple vest with a V-neck. Kind of is a bummer. They should have given with or without sleeves. That would be an even better recipe book, but I digress. Then we have a classic sweater in DK with optional collars. So we've got this, that is a pretty cute collar, but otherwise it looks like there's kind of a crew neck underneath that. But it is a different weight than the blue one from before. The gauge here is 22 stitches for 4 inches. So it is the same gauge as that one. Then we've got this chunky sweater with this almost cowl neck collar, and it looks like a raglan sleeve. Again, 2x2 rib. And the gauge here is 15 stitches for 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So this one is definitely a lot chunkier. Then here's the short vest top in double knit. Again, we're at 22 stitches for 4 inches. This is very boxy. It does look like there's a little bit of underarm shaping and shaping around here. We've just got garter stitch edgings. So that's just a cute little bit of difference there. And it's got a nice crop fit, which is a very modern, very desirable in modern patterns. So that one would probably work really well today. Then here is the classic 4-ply cardigan. So the tension is 28 stitches per 4 inches or 10 centimeters. We've got, you know, V-neck here and pockets, which of course you could eliminate if you don't want pockets. And of course, if you're doing a picture, you're probably putting it on the back, but you could also, you know, do little emblems and things like that. And then the chunky cardigan. Again, we're back to 15 stitches per 4 inches. Definitely see the 50s influence in this. I actually do have some 50s patterns. Well, no, I think it is a 60s book. But I do have some patterns that have that same kind of shape profile. So then we have little inset pockets. I don't know the proper names for that kind of pocket. Welt, is that a welt pocket? I don't know. These little slit pockets and a nice little rolled collar. This one incorporates a zipper. And then that is the last pattern. So now, once you have chosen your stockinette stitch pattern, could be one from this book, could be one from anywhere, as long as you've got your blank canvas. Now we can look at some of the designs. So we're going to flip through these designs and see if any of them inspire us before we move on to the next book. So first section is humor. What do we got? Hot dog. This is given on the 4-ply sweater, so we got lots of detail with the onions and the steam. With or without the text, your call. Then we have a bow. This is the one shown on the cover. I don't know why this is humor, but I will say I have seen at least 3 or 4 vintage sweaters in person in one store alone at different times with bows on them. So must have been some kind of popular thing to have a big bow on a shirt. So we've got the polka dot bow. Oh, this one's really cute. Just a bunch of hearts. Does work really well on that pink cropped vest. So that one's really adorable. You could, of course, just take individual ones and put them wherever you want. And this one's so great. I love this one. Banana. We've got the Memphis-inspired triangle in the back with some abstract lettering. This one's really fun. They're showing it here on the back of the 50s style cardigan. And, you know, banana for scale, I guess. I might. I don't know. I don't have a reason to want a banana on a sweater, but I dig that one. I like the style of that one. Okay, next. Home Sweet Home. Not quite so sold on this one, and that's just kind of weird. I don't know about this one, but you know. Okay, what's next? A TV. This one's super fun. I love that we got the static going, and it's on a little rolling cart, and they're showing it here on that cropped vest. That one's just fun retro vibes. Love that. And then at the end of each section, they have included a blank graph. And now we're into pets. So this one's pretty cool. We just got a tiger in a diamond. That's pretty fun. Teddy bear with a bow. Again, with the bow. Don't know why that's a pet. We have a spaniel. Again, we've got the text on here, which of course you don't have to use. But the stripes do carry around to the front in that illustration, so that's kind of fun. Now this one I can get behind, this cute little cat sweater. So we've got the tabby cat, that's pretty fun. And the graph paper. So now we're into the pop section. That was not a lot of pets. Starting with, this one's called Boogie Woogie. We just have a keyboard with some hands and music notes, and it's a little odd, but I mean, 80s, wild 80s sweater. It's still kind of fun. This one's got a fun late 80s, early 90s vibe to it with the lettering. Got the classic saxophone. Here they've even got music notes, although that's not included on this graph, but that one's pretty fun. I don't know that I would want it to say jazz, but I would certainly take inspiration from the letters and the little lines of color. And a boombox. This one's called Stereo Sounds. So that's fun. Put that on one with a TV. Could be fun to like combine a bunch of these different retro elements. Gotta love that. Here we have a hot rod, and it gives a little zigzag for the sleeves. This one just says rock and roll. They're not all winners, honestly. A jukebox. Now this is one that I think would look great on the back of a cardigan. That's what I would probably put this one on. This one would be really fun. Give you some 50s vibes. Pretty great. All right, now we're on heroes. Okay, now this one, this is called The King, clearly Elvis. I'm not an Elvis fan, but I really love this graphic style. And I'm really digging how on this sweater, they've done it in gray and then incorporated each of the different colors on each of the different ribbing sections. So I'm really loving this one. And actually, I might take inspiration from this later on when I get to trying out my own design. So we might be coming back to this one. It's pretty simple. It's just these rectangles of color. It actually is very reminiscent of my Cool Times Barbie sweater, and even some of the same colors. So I'm digging that one. I like that one a lot, even though I don't care that it's Elvis. We got a Marilyn Monroe one, which, you know what? First glance, I feel like you could make just a few alterations and turn it into B. Arthur. Like if you change the earrings and like take away the blue eyeshadow and the mole, thin out the lips a little, you could almost make this one into B. Arthur, and I would be so into that. I do love the graphic triangle on the back. Over here, they've carried the triangle onto the front on either side of the zipper on that cardigan. Really fun idea. And Groucho Marx. This one's really wacky, I think, and we've got these stripy sleeves with a big bold band of color at the bottom. Not one I would ever want, but pretty fun idea. General superhero sweater. This one could be really fun. You know, we've got the stripes on the sleeves to kind of bring it all together. That one's fun. And into sports. So here is a windsurfer. This one I think could be really fun. Especially if you're into like Outrun 80s style. You could eliminate the windsurfer. You could add something else there. You could add like Outrun style stripes. That one actually really does speak to me a lot. I think that one could be a lot of fun and very versatile for more than just windsurfing. Here we have tennis. And I have yet to figure out, like, did everyone actually play tennis in the 80s or like what? Because it seems really ubiquitous. This one, I also don't really understand. It just says jogger. I do really dig the lettering style on here and the stripes incorporated on the collar. So I think that would be another one to take an inspiration from. If you've got some other bit of text that you want to give a retro style to, that could be really fun. And I think we're gonna be able to circle back to that at the end of the book. This one's called Knockout. It's just a boxer. I'm not into boxing, but if you are, like, the design for that one is pretty cool. I like the way they used the red, white, and blue there. And we have a power bike. Again, same thing. I wouldn't want this on a sweater, but maybe you know someone who does. Here it is, right here. Okay, and star signs. It doesn't give a chart for every single sign, but here we have Taurus with lettering style there. Leo, which this one's pretty fun. I like the illustration style of that lion. And then here we just have the color pictures for each sign, but they don't have the graph on them. So you would, if you wanted to use any of these designs, you would have to work it out and use the transfer method. You can see where the lines would go, but you would have to add them in yourself. Finally, I'm pretty sure finally, special events. What do we have? Holiday cruise. This is actually a thing now, right? Like, I don't remember cruises being much of a thing in the 80s, but nowadays, there's even like craft cruises and quilting cruises and probably knitting cruises. And, you know, here you go. If you're going on a knitting cruise, you can knit a cruise ship too. A birthday cake. Don't think I'd want that on a sweater, but you know, maybe for a child, that could be fun. Wedding bells. This one's also kind of dorky. But again, you know, maybe you just want the dove. That could be cute too. And a Christmas tree. Now this one could be a great foundation for your ugly Christmas sweater. So is that the last one? Yep. And then we're into alphabets. Now this is probably one of the most useful parts of the book because it has 4 alphabets. So here is the one I said we would circle back to, that jogger sweater. So here is that typeface here. So you can make your own word in that style. Of course, the way they had, you know, this line going through the G's. Oh, it doesn't have the capital J. Oh, that's a bummer. So you might have to figure out some of your own lettering, but you could potentially also do the same grid transfer thing with any font on your computer. You know, you'd have to just blow it up really big so you can transfer it properly and get the right amount of detail. But yeah, so that one's really fun. Here we have a rounded serif lowercase alphabet. And here we have an uppercase chunky serif alphabet and an uppercase sans serif alphabet. And that is the end of that book. We just have a few additional pages of graph paper that you could use if you wanted to mess up your own book. So that is the end of George Hostler's Knatty Knits. A lot of fun ideas and inspiration in there. Some you could use right out of the book, but a lot that you could customize to your own liking. So let's move on to the next book. This is Picture Knits by Lori Cosgrove. More than 40 distinctive, easy to make sweater patterns. And you can see right off the bat, these are incorporating a lot of like dot patterns as well. So we do have a different style going here. This is published 1989 in the US, in New York. Chapter 1, it's going to discuss hand knitting. Chapter 2, we have some basic instructions for base sweaters. We've got a chapter on machine knitting, a chapter on creating your own designs, and the next 3 chapters have some different pattern designs. Then we've got another chapter of just a few additional projects and some extra patterns. So let's get into this one. First up, we've got this section on hand knitting. Since all of the sweaters are the same basic pattern, the same set of directions is used for every sweater. Only the designs and sizes vary. For example, all the women's sweater pattern graphs are graphed out for a size 34 to 36, or 95 stitches at beginning. So if you want to make the sweater in a 38 to 40, 99 stitches at the beginning, you must add 2 stitches to each side of the graph. So although it's not giving a lot of different sizes, it is kind of indicating how you can adjust the pattern given to the size you want. And then we've got a bit about the care of wool sweaters, tips for ensuring proper fit. So once again here, it's giving you the baseline of where these patterns are starting and, you know, indicating how you can make your adjustments. Here's got a paragraph on lengthening or shortening, increasing or decreasing the width of the garment, and adjusting pattern graphs. And here you can see adjusting a men's size pattern graph to a women's size. So we've got the larger men's size here. This is one where it's got the dots on the lower half and the dots stop at the underarm, and they've brought it down for a smaller arm size, as well as tapering in here. So kind of matching up the graph that would be centered and just bringing in the edges a little bit. Instructions. So here is the pattern for the basic men's sweater used in this book. And it is done at a gauge of 5.5 stitches per inch. So what is that? 5, 10, 22 stitches, 22 stitches for 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So here's the men's sweater pattern. Here is the women's sweater pattern, same gauge as the men's. And the children's, we've got a larger size, 8, 10, 12, same gauge. And the smaller one for size 2, 4, 6. Again, same gauge. So we've got 4 size patterns here: men, women, larger children, smaller children. So those are our blank canvases for this book. Now, we've got a section on machine knitting. And again, I'm not going to read into any of this, but it is good to note that it is included. And it's several pages here. And here are actually some punch cards. Now, my knitting machine doesn't use punch cards, and I don't know anything about them. But if you have a knitting machine that uses this style of punch cards, here they are. And there's more. And more. Now we have a chapter on creating your own designs. This section of the book will show you how to transform your own designs into a picture pattern sweater. Tip: the more graph paper you have on hand, the freer you'll feel to experiment. Yeah? Yeah. So here we've got the outline of the sweater on the graph paper. And here she's got a close-up of centering a duck design. Another way to personalize your picture knit sweaters is to mix and match design elements from the sweaters in this book. Just like an artist with canvas and paints, you will want your designs to be nicely balanced. Think of your sweater as the canvas and your yarn as the paint, which we have been doing. Yay us. All right, so here she's repeated the duck and showed how to kind of extrapolate a repeat design from that. Preparing your graph. Mark off the outlines for a front-back sweater piece on a piece of graph paper as shown in the illustration. Next, find the center of the bottom row and mark a line straight up to the top. Use the center line to balance your design. You can choose a border design and pencil that in. Use your borders as reference point for placing your picture designs. The duck pattern is 15 stitches wide. So 91 minus 15 equals a maximum of 6 ducks across the bottom of the sweater. Since I will want some space between the ducks, I decide to use only 5 ducks. 5 ducks times 15 stitches per duck equals 75 total stitches for ducks. 91 minus 75 equals 16 stitches left over. I could simply put 4 stitches between each duck, but I've decided to make 2 between each duck and 4 more plain stitches on each side of my pattern graph. Now I re-add to check my math. So yes, math, but you know, elementary math. Now we're going to start looking through the patterns that are in this book. So first up we have this really cute one. It's a little country cabin it's called, but it's just a cute little house. It's got trees on the sleeves. So we've got the dot pattern and she's got a detail of that here and a border pattern as well. Then we have a hunting dog with ducks on the sleeve and this little leaping Labrador and a unique little grassy looking border there. Here is a child's size pattern given. This is a couple of cows. It is actually really hard to see. So she did not color her graph in like the other author did. She used symbols like you would see in, you know, a cross stitch or something, and they are a little bit hard to make out. But again, here, this is given in a child size. If you wanted it in an adult, you would just add stitches to the outer edges. This has the same border as those dogs did. And then here is some Scotties or Westies given on a women's, and so you can see the difference between 1 dog on the child's, 3 on the woman's. This one is a Victorian stroller. So we've got a Victorian lady with her hat taking her poodle for a walk. This one's a little bit more of a reach, but maybe it appeals to someone out there. I do like the color choices here. The pink and the green is pretty. This is sledding. We've got some kids sledding and some dogs, it looks like, with a dog and the moon on the sleeve. Here is some maple leaves. This one's shown on a men's sweater and it's got the maple leaves on the bottom half. Here is a child's sweater with a little teddy bear and an alphabet block. kind of cute. I do like this. I think we saw this border on that first one, but you can see how it looks different in those colors. Another dog. This one is a Labrador surrounded by some sticks, with some sticks on the sleeve. This one, yeah, they're not all winners in this one, but you can mix and match and figure out what you like. This one I really like. This one is just a bunch of flamingos. Now, I kind of would rather the flamingos up top, but I really do like the idea of a flamingo sweater. That could be really fun. Country musicians. So we've got some musicians in a wagon, got a cello player and a couple others, and I don't know if that's a horse or a donkey or what, but yeah, kind of interesting. Elves, something you could add to your ugly Christmas sweater. I don't think I like it as the sole element on a sweater though. Same thing with snowmen. We've got a snowman here you could add to your ugly Christmas sweater. Another dog, a Newfie and pups. So we've got a Newfoundland adult and 2 little pups. This one's shown on a children's. Yes, there are a lot of dogs in this book. And another chapter. I don't know how she's broken up these patterns. There doesn't seem to be a theme here. Here we've got some ducks. These are pretty cute. The contrast doesn't quite work on this one, but I do like the checkerboard borders. Here we have some snowflakes, a nice basic design element you could incorporate in a lot of different things. And it's got the dots above and below. And poodles. So this is kind of the same poodle as that Victorian lady. A lot easier to read without the secondary element of the woman standing behind. I do like this border. That's kind of a nice border. Here we have another sleigh, a horse and sleigh, with a little 4-pointed snowflake on the sleeve. You know what though? I'm not digging the sleigh designs on this, but this could be a nice basis for a unicorn. That almost looks like a unicorn horn. So you could just make that a little longer, put an ear somewhere else, and turn it into a unicorn. An elephant. That one's kind of cute. It is a very childish style of elephant, and this is shown on a children's size sweater. But that is very cute. That's just an interesting little design element there, I suppose. So that's kind of cute. And more dogs, Newfoundlands again. I like the green and yellow combo though. What else? Oh, this one's pretty. This is Knit Roses. So that's a really interesting, delicate design. I feel like there's not quite enough contrast for the intricacy to show up with that pale pink against the cream. But if you darken that a little bit so you could see it better, that would be really pretty. And then the dots are different as well. They've got they're like little tiny flowers with little leaves in them or something. So that's a really lovely idea. And then it's got that grassy looking border again. And this one, that one's cute. I like this one. Little ducks with umbrellas. This one's shown in a child's size. And probably more suitable for a child to wear, but I don't know. That one's really cute. Duck with an umbrella. I love it. All right, next we have a tulip design. This one kind of leans into some Art Deco revival, Art Deco style, so that could be really fun. I do like the alternating purples here. That's pretty lovely. And that's like a turquoise green. I do like that. And it does appear that these stems, and same on the flamingo leg that we looked at earlier, I do think those are actually duplicate stitched on afterwards. So that would simplify things a lot. Okay, here we have just a basic dot pattern all over. So not a whole lot going on this one, except I do really like this idea of the way she's done the border here. We've got it like zigzagging a bit with the little red dots, and they don't appear anywhere else in the sweater except at the borders. So that's kind of fun. Palm trees on a sweater. It's cute. This one's given in a child's size, and we've got the sun on the sleeve. We've got some little lambs, again on a child's size. Very cute. And here we have some reindeer. This one's shown on a men's. We've got it going across the top, including the sleeves. And again, great way to, you could take a lot of elements from this book to make your own ugly Christmas sweater, because there are actually a lot of Christmassy, wintry themes in a lot of these designs. And the final chapter of patterns, fish. So this one's got a zigzag border here. This one actually, and it's shown on a men's, this one actually is the kind of thing that I would do that, you know, that meme where they've got all the fish going one way except for one. I would take one fish and turn it the other way and put it in a different color and like make it to go along with that meme. I think that would be fun. It also is reminiscent of the Princess Diana black sheep sweater. So that could be a really fun one to do. Here we have some bunnies. I think the proportions aren't quite right on these, but could be pretty cute. That's given on a child's size, of course. We've got some geese again. This could go along with that hunting dog one. Are they the same geese? She might be reusing some stuff here, as we saw with the poodle and probably the Newfies, the Newfoundland dogs. Are these the same? Some of them are the same, but that one, yeah, okay, they're the same, but there's no dog. But still, you know, inspiration, I guess. And more dogs, sheepdogs this time. They are pretty cute. If you're a dog lover, this book is going to serve you well. We have a horse. This one, she's included the name Clyde for the horse, and we've got a horseshoe. Okay, here we have an all over woods pattern, and I actually really like this one. Although it's interesting, like from far away, it really has a kind of like Art Nouveau kind of thing going for it. Like they just look like little fans or something, the way these branches get really thin. So they're just kind of alternating dots. But yeah, that one's, I think I like that one. I do feel like it could use some additional element though. But, or if you just went all the way up, if you did the trees going all the way, that one could be pretty fun. Another one with a sled and a dog. So again, they're not all winners in this book, but it's still a great place to start. Here is Tap Dancers. So the other book had Groucho, and this one's got Charlie. We got Charlie Chaplin here. A skier here. Now this one, I don't think 3 skiers together doesn't really work for me, but you could incorporate that into something else. That would be a fun design element somewhere, I'm sure, especially in your ugly Christmas sweater. Here is a Christmas cactus. Just a fun snowflake looking pattern. Could be a nice element to throw in somewhere. Finally, cats. All those dogs, and we get one cat sweater. And I can seriously get behind this one. This one's really cute. It's got a little yarn ball here, and they're showing it on a men's vest in brown. But that one's really cute. That one, I like that one. Okay, and then here is a baby bag. So this is an infant size 6 months, and it's got these alphabet blocks, which is the same block that we saw on the sweater earlier, on the child's sweater earlier, but it has a much more intricate dot pattern. And another baby bag, Little Maids. Also very reminiscent of the Sunbonnet Sue. So I would probably want to make the bonnet a little bit more pronounced if I was going to make it Sunbonnet Sue, but that one's pretty cute. And we've got the same little flowery design that the rose sweater had. And then here are the additional projects. So this is where you find the pattern for that baby bag. Here's the pattern for the vest, and there's a sweater dress. I don't remember seeing a sweater dress. I don't think it actually showed any examples in a sweater dress, but you could make a sweater dress for your child. And then we do have mitten patterns where you can take just the one little design element that you like and make some mittens. So here's the men's size. We have the women's size. Yeah, no, there's no children's size. All right, the kids don't get mittens. And then here we have a section of some additional patterns already graphed out for you. Sailboat, anchor, you got a dancer, windmill, a bunny and a turtle, tortoise and the hare, some flowers, another Christmas tree, penguin, a couple of vehicles, more dogs, because of course. And here are some additional borders and an alphabet. And then finally, there's just several pages of machine knitting conversion charts, which I don't know how to use, but if you need one, they're here. So that is the end of Picture Knits by Lori Cosgrove. The next thing I wanted to do was try to adjust one of these designs to reflect my interests. And the thing that inspired me the most was this Elvis design, but not the Elvis part, the color blocking. But I want to, instead of Elvis, I want to put my favorite animal, a crow. Now, I don't have a picture handy that I'm going to go off of. This is just going to be a rough draft anyway, proof of concept. So I'm going to see if I can draw my own crow, and we are going to utilize his instructions for translating it to that graph. So first thing I need to do, I have found some plain white paper, and I'm just going to see if I can draw a crow that I like. See if I can remember how to draw a crow. We got a big beefy beak. And that head might be too big. There we go. We'll go down here. Neck goes in a little, but then he's got a big poofy belly. I made it too big is what I did. And this is not going to be the final drawing. When I want to do this for real, I'm going to go through my own photos of crows and choose one that I can trace. So we're not going to worry about the bottom of the crow right now. I don't have a reference properly with me. So we're just going to let that be. Of course, now he's so poofy there, his beak doesn't look big enough. That's a little better. Now that we have a drawing to work off of, the next step was to make a grid. I need a straight edge. Let me grab my T-square. Oh, I do have an eraser. No, too late now. Need to move this. My table's too small. I've got this piece of vellum. I'm going to take his advice. A roller ruler would be good. I do need the top of that square. Now we're going to draw the lines going this way. Okay, so here we have the grid on my crow. So what I need to do now is find my graph paper. So we're going to start by marking out 7 stitches to the inch. Now this graph paper is actually, the squares are not small enough for this whole design anyway. So this is just, again, practice. So I'm going to start here. I don't want to go all the way to the edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in my design, that represents 1 inch in width. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then he has the row gauge at 9. So we're going to count 9 squares up. And I don't want to start right at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now I'm going to take my T-square again, and I'm going to draw these lines out to make a full grid. So here is my, oops, missed there, my grid that is elongated to account for the difference in rows versus stitches. And now all I need to do is copy square by square from here to here. Now again, my crow is too big. We're not going to fit the whole thing on anyway. What I need to do is, since I'm using a piece of tracing paper, I just need to make sure that it's not going to move on me. And we'll start with the beak. So I'm going to start the beak here. No, let me move the line so that it bisects the beak so that it's a little easier to figure out where my beak is starting. How about that? So we're going to start the point of the beak here, and then I'm going to kind of look over here. So if I were to break this into quarters, that line is about 1/4 of the way up, which puts it actually about here. So I'm going to take my line like that. Yeah, I do want it to be curved for now. And then here it's a little more than halfway up. So that's going to be the top of that part of the beak. But it's a little bit in, so we'll bring it in by 1 stitch, like so. And then it goes up, not quite to 1/4 of the way up. Now on this one, that curve from here is almost halfway across, so I kind of want it to end there. So I'm going to end my line like so. Here, it's not quite 1/4 of the way up, although I don't have my whole square here. So this one's a little bit harder to judge. But I'm gonna, what is 1/4 of here? If that's half, that's 1/4, a little more than 2 is about 1/4 of the way up the square. So we're gonna bring it to there and back down to half. Now that's a little too pointy. So now I'm gonna even that out. But again, it is going to be a little bit elongated. Okay, and then here, down to, again, not quite halfway through. And then, I don't have the rest of my square there, there we go. About a third of the way across there. So if I had this grid like marked out when like quarter, third, you know, measurements like that, I could do the same here, and that would make it a lot easier for me to translate this drawing in this grid style. Okay, so let's go, where was I? Here. Now this one's a little trickier because it curves out and in again, but look, it's ending right at the point. So I just need to bring it in. I'm going to follow that curve in and back out. And I think that's the line I want, but we're going off the page anyway. So we're just going to extend that out and come back and deal with the rest of the beak. I would probably be duplicate stitching the eye afterwards. I'm just going to go ahead and draw it as an oval for now. That's not the way the eye would look. Okay, but now you can see how I've translated this drawing into now an elongated one. And then the next thing that I would do is make it follow the actual stitch lines. We'll just do it as a rectangle for now. And then here, again, I would probably embroider that. So again, this was just practice, but proof of concept. We have gone from this drawing, squat, fat, kind of, almost realistic shape anyway, to one that is elongated that I can plug into the rest of the graphic at this gauge of knitting. There is a sample of my crow design as instructed in Knatty Knits. I'm definitely going to play around with this though. I really would love to make a crow sweater one day, especially in that 80s style. It's going to be a long way down the road, but if I ever do get around to it, I will certainly bring you along for the ride, and we will go through it step by step at that time. Well, my friends, that is it for today's library day. I really hope that these books inspired you not only to look for your own crazy wild 80s sweater patterns, but possibly to create your own. And that all you need is a stockinette sweater in any shape you like that can act as a blank canvas for a design of your very own. And I actually did do this in a previous project, my Cool Times Barbie sweater. That is exactly what I did, even though it was in fact my first knit sweater ever. There are 3 videos for that project, but you will see most of the design aspects of that sweater in the second part of that project. So I will link that video below. I did not use this technique because I did not own this book at that time, and it probably would have gone much smoother, but if you are interested in seeing that, I will link that video. If you've got an idea of what kind of graphic design you would want to place on a sweater, I would love to hear it down below. Let's swap ideas and see if we can inspire each other. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.